Well, how tall is too tall when it comes to buildings in downtown Victoria? Today on Chamber Chats, we're going to be talking about the housing crisis from the developer's perspective. To do that, we're going to be talking to Jon Stovell from Reliance Properties. We're going to be sitting down with John Wilson from the Chamber, and we're going to catch up with Rick Ilich from Townline. This is Chamber Chats. Hello and welcome to Chamber Chats. My name is Paul Haysom. Today we're talking about housing affordability in these tough economic times and just how complex it can be for developers. And to do that, we're joined by Jon Stovell, the president and CEO of Reliance Properties. John, thank you very much for joining us here. Tell us where we are today, because this is a pretty significant spot in Victoria right now.
Yeah, we're at the corner. Well, right now we're on Cormorant, so we're at a site here that's bordered by Cormorant to the north and Pandora to the south and Blanchard to the east, up against Giles large office building here. So it's a two-story office building, probably built in the 70s, and we're looking at doing a major new project here, so the city of Victoria.
Yeah, major is understated, I'd say. You wanted to go quite high. Can you give us a Coles notes on the proposal here?
Yeah, so we're looking at a 35-story building. The tallest building in Victoria right now under constructed is around 25 stories. But there have been taller buildings already approved for Wara Screen and also for the baby across the bridge there. So this is, Pandora. So we all know the issues of Pandora, as it were. We're kind of at the west end of, the more troubled parts of Pandora. We're really looking at replacing an aged, bordering on obsolete government office building here that's very unlikely to continue to be occupied with a very large new, condominium project with retail at grade and a little bit of commercial space. And that's what's being considered right now. Unfortunately, I went to council and got kind of pushed back to the drawing boards, but we're at the beginning of what I think is going to be a successful process.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so you're trying to stay positive on that because it did get voted down in council. I'm kind of interested, why would you come in so big right away, and why not match the city's OCP, or is that just what developers are dealing with right now?
So there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, we did discuss this in advance of planning and some councillors, and the idea was to really deliver a project that extra 10 stories would allow us to do a lot of things. We've got a very significant plaza behind us here, which is sort of sunken down, nobody uses.
Right.
Complete reimagining of that public plaza, some really great commercial space, some family-sized housing units, and also we're planning to make a significant financial contribution to arts and culture and artist spaces in downtown Victoria, where we have some of our buildings, and they're always getting chased out. So it's a bit more of that lower mainland model where you let the project be a bit bigger. Height doesn't really matter once you're above a certain point. And then it can deliver more financially back to the community.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this stage of it was voted down. It was by one vote. You got a lot of support as well. So what are you hearing from some of the councillors as to pushback, but also some support? Because there's certainly both.
Yeah, interestingly, the mayor, in a recent article in Times Columnist, talked about the relationship they have with Reliance, in which he hopes we continue to want to invest in the city. I mean, this is an investment well in excess of $200 million.
Right.
And this is what the city needs right now in a period of disinvestment. There's a lot of construction, a lot of cranes.
Right.
But I think we're seeing decisions that were made about development a number of years ago, and we're going to see a real slowdown if we don't find ways to promote development. So we're confident, and we've already been encouraged by some councillors to come back to me. We never expected that application to just simply sail through. A lot of the times these OCPs, they take years to develop. When the day they're brought in, they're often already 3 or 4 years out of date.
Right.
And we all know that the government are not at work.
Right.
They may be working, but they're not at work. And so there's a real hollowing out of the downtown, all these office buildings. So we maintain not only that we needed to go a bit higher, but that we didn't need to do so much commercial space, that we could do pure residential. And this area can really use it. I mean, this is kind of a quiet, very commercial area of the downtown, and at night it feels very abandoned and not even really that safe. So I think it would really benefit from how a whole bunch of people moving into this area.
Would you like to have seen a bit more back and forth? At least they come back, say, look, we can't approve it to go this high, but maybe we can come back. And there wasn't a whole lot of that, was there?
Yeah, that was one of the options in the report. The report had two choices for council. One was just to outright reject. The other was to provide perhaps some insight about where council would have flexibility and to come and to refer the project back to staff and to us. And that's what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they chose to just fully reject it, which means the project is kind of technically dead. Your fee is gone. You have to kind of start over again.
You wait a year, right? Isn't it
Yeah.
for a lot of the
if you
process.
change it a lot, you can come back in. But you have to go through we had a very extensive public engagement process with the Community Lands Association. We had an even wider meeting for the whole community. We had an open house. And so it almost feels a bit punitive. It's like, how dare you, right? And I don't think this is a time in the city when the city can afford to look at a willing investor like that and just go pound sand. Well over 95% of all housing is built by the private sector.
Right.
So private sector is an absolute critical partner in developing all types of housing across all Canadian economies.
Is there a concern that Victoria could potentially lose out on some major projects because other places are just incentivizing it?
Very much so. I mean, we don't have to develop in Victoria. We get up in the morning and we decide where we can do business.
Yeah.
Victoria has always been known for being the trickiest one. Victoria and Vancouver, we love the city and I'm a big fan, but sometimes you feel a little bit, just feel like it'd be better if there was a bit more collaboration than a kind of an adversarial relationship.
Will you continue shooting for the fences with these very tall buildings and thinking outside the box, or is it kind of coming back down to earth and reaching closer to the OCP? Like, what is a reality for a developer who's going to have to make some money as well?
Well, the reality with the current OCP in this location is I would not develop under the current OCP in this location. To do a decent sized building on this very large site, well-located site, we would be required to build a whole bunch of commercial office space, as an example. Right. That just is not in the cards right now. So we really do need to, and Reliance has always done that. We've always sought to bring creative solutions to the table, and we'll work with our property owners in the region as well. There's a new property owner group called Chorus that's coming together that is, going to be many, many property owners, talking to the cities and local governments about all matters that are affecting property owners, not just development constraints, but property taxes and street disorder and safety. And so, we just need to really bring the business perspective to the table with local governments and have them get a better appreciation for the challenges that are faced by people who want to invest and occupy businesses in the city.
Are you optimistic that can happen here?
Yeah, we're very optimistic. We're here for the long haul, and this is just a bump in the road.
I like it. Well, Jon Stovell, thank you very much for your time. Always appreciate Jon Stovell from Reliance Properties. Much more Chamber Chats ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back to Chamber Chats. Today's episode is all about housing affordability in these tough economic times and the best way to deal with development. And to do that, we're joined by Chamber CEO John Wilson once again. John, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me as always, Paul.
Okay, so affordability no doubt under pressure right now, and most people in Victoria still want to see things move forward. So you and I have talked a lot about being solutions-based and trying to make some solutions. Where do you start with this?
Well, as you mentioned, you and I talked about businesses working, want to be part of the solution, not contributing to the problem, but and that's what developers are at as well. We need the city to progress and move development applications along faster. Reducing time reduces costs. So it really is a key issue that some properties are held on to for years on end, and you can imagine the holding costs and the carrying costs involved with the development, and that just all trickles down to the end user. I think one thing that often gets misconstrued by the general public and maybe the bureaucrats and city staff is that the equation really never changes. It's the inputs, the inputs and the outputs that change. So the higher the cost going into an equation, the higher the cost will be for the property. The landowner, the developer, everybody needs to not only cover their costs, but they need to make a profit. And so those the inputs create higher outputs, which at the end of the day, the consumer is paying for.
When we look back at some major capital projects and just the government's track record with that, what can we maybe learn from the past and potentially do differently?
Well, getting them done on time and on budget. It seems to be a common thread that is not happening. We're seeing major projects 50% cost overrun, significant numbers, significant 1 to 2 year time delays, and again, all costing money and costing time. And so we have to find a way to structure that in. And then again, that's all everybody working together, and maybe that's more of a 3P public-private partnership, where everybody's in it together and committed to the same timeline and same cost structure together.
And right now we have some pretty big players bidding on projects in the capital region, and that's a good thing because you want to see that growth in the region. But would we be in jeopardy of potentially losing that if we keep pushing back, keep saying no as a region, that they would eventually just go to Vancouver where they can build higher and make more money off of that?
I think so. I mean, I think developers like Victoria. Obviously, it's a place where we all know the demand is high. People want to live here. So it is a good business case for them. But the frustration comes in. I mean, you've heard it. I've heard it. There's frustration in time, in delays, and in the general perception that they're the bad guys, if you will, bad people trying to ruin
the face of the city.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they're doing their job, and they're trying to create housing, which we all know is in dire need in our communities. So you're 100% right. They could, a frustration could get to a point where they just decide not to develop here anymore. We do know local developers in the past have said, I'm not building in Victoria anymore.
There's too much red tape happening
exactly.
there. Now, you've sort of alluded to it already, but we've discussed the municipal budget at length, you and I. But when it comes to maybe taxes and the proposed expansion of PST, how much could that have an impact on progress?
Well, it could have an enormous impact. We've just seen recently in Manitoba and more recently in Ontario, where development costs have been cut, PST/HST, depending on the province, has been reduced, whether that's in groceries or in housing. And I know in Ontario, they're talking numbers of over $100,000 reduction in costs for these homes. That's significant, right? So it just goes to show you it can be done, and it's something that we would hope the British Columbia government looks at doing.
A lot of people, we love Victoria because it's not Vancouver. It's not a massive sprawl like Vancouver. You sort of alluded to that. So housing, certainly limited right now. Needs are changing. So how do you address that need without losing the region's identity?
Well, it goes back to design and planning for sure. But I think transportation plays a key element here.
For sure.
We have spread out Greater Victoria quite a lot compared to years ago, and that's all good. But I don't think we've kept up with transportation planning along the way, which has created the infamous Colwood Crawl and such. And so and we at the Chamber, we believe that it's a multi-pronged solution around transportation. We think, bus lanes are good, bike lanes are good. We believe that there's a possibility for a commuter rail, but we also believe there's a possibility for a commuter ferry from the West Shore. But we also think that the car is going to play and will remain to play a part of the solution. So we see structures around or planning around parking and transportation on Blanchard and Douglas that doesn't make sense in the business's eyes, and businesses are not consulted, and they certainly don't feel thought of in the process.
How much of it is just communication and that keeping up that dialogue from all the pieces involved? Because there's a lot of pieces involved.
There is, yeah, and it does go down to communication and going back to the fact that business isn't bad, developers aren't bad. They're part of the equation here,
Right.
and they need to be spoken with, not spoken to, and help them help you, in this case, the city, make things work.
And Victoria will never be Vancouver, right?
Never, not as long unless we build a bridge.
Our hockey team's better as well, so let's hold on to that. John Wilson, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for coming back on the show. That is John Wilson, the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber. Much more Chamber chats still ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back to Chamber Chats. Today we're talking about affordability in these tough economic times and just how complex it can be for developers. For more on that, we are joined by Rick Ilich, the CEO of Townline. Rick, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So your company has built several major projects in this region, along with hundreds of homes and, of course, affordable rental units. Can you maybe give us a sense how much things have changed over the last few years?
Well, I guess when it comes to housing policy and codes and such, change is constant. If I finished a building this week, I would likely not be able to start building the same building on Monday. The changes in policy and codes are so rapid. It's kind of a start from scratch every time, which adds a lot of complexity, cost, and frustration, to housing delivery. Just for all, I think we're all chasing the same thing. We're trying to find a better level of affordability, whether it be rental or whether it be ownership. But it's more often than not, policy and is typically driving the cost.
What for you would be that biggest challenge right now? Is it policy?
Without question. I would say policy and fee structures. We often reference, and unfortunately, don't get mad at me if I'm going to reference Vancouver for a moment, but the cost of concrete condominiums in Vancouver, I would argue about $300 a square foot of that is a result of city, provincial fees and baked in policies, or the baked in ideology around policies. More often than not, once we break ground, we're full speed ahead. But getting there is more often the challenge than building. It can often take longer to get a building approved than it does to build it. Doesn't seem very logical. Again, if we were able to simplify and rinse and repeat, so to speak, on some designs, that would be a dramatic reduction in the time continuum of getting new homes to the street.
Is there a fear that major developers like yourself would potentially move on from the capital region just to focus on regions where maybe they have more leeway, or governments even try to incentivize that growth?
Without hesitation, yes. We don't see incentives in this province from community to community. Unlike we do work in the United States, and we do see incentives, and we can negotiate incentives to make things work. It's like any business, it's really simple math. And if you can't cover your costs, you're not going to move forward. If you can't make some acceptable level of margin that satisfies the banks, that gives them the confidence to fund you, you're not going to be breaking ground. So in a moment like now, where a reset on immigration across the country has dramatically impacted demands, and you could debate whether that's good or bad. It has done some interesting things. Government will try to take credit that rents are coming down. That's got nothing to do with local government. It's got everything to do with changing immigration policies and student visa policies. But the win is rents are coming down. So as much as I'm at a point now where it's very challenged to make the math work, And we do have a couple of properties in Victoria that we would like to break ground on, and we will not be breaking ground on because the math simply doesn't work. The rents to accommodate all the costs, all the policies, all the fees and taxes, the rents need to go up. So if we really politically, if we really want to drive rents to a level of to a broader audience, which is a great initiative, then this government, all levels of government has to cooperate and help us get costs down.
Final question. What do you think, Rick, the future of Victoria is going to look like, maybe compared to what we see today?
That's interesting. Firstly, the elephant on the table in Victoria is what's the right word? A mistake by provincial government by promoting the work from home policies, which is keeping people out of the downtown core, which is crushing small businesses, which is promoting vacancy, which vacancy means fewer eyes on the street, and the unfortunate safety issues in the city grow, and that's happening. So that's got to change. Once that will change, and it will change, when that changes and people are back in the office and working 5 days a week like normal people and rest of the world, you're going to have life on the streets. These small businesses will survive and thrive, hopefully. And to Victoria's credit, their direction around safety is they're wide-eyed and being somewhat aggressive in trying to improve that, fix all that. And I couldn't think of a better city in Canada to live.
Yeah. Well, we hope that you're a part of that. I know a lot of people hope that you and your company are part of that as well. Rick Ilich, I know you're a busy man. Thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
That has been Rick Ilich, the CEO of Townline. And that does it for another episode of Chamber Chats. Thank you to all of our amazing guests. Now, if you want to get involved in the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, head to victoriachamber.ca. Until we chat again.